Welcome to the Hollywood Heretic, the entertainment industry podcast, where we break down what's broken and how to fix it. I am really happy today to welcome two of my oldest friends and most revered colleagues, Mark Keizer and Tim Cogshell. We all go way, way back. Tim and I are on radio together regularly on Film Week, 89.3 LAist in Los Angeles, also scpr.org. And we do the DigiGods podcast together, which Mark and I started many years ago. We're also all members of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association and members of the Critics' Choice Association. And we are all partners in cinegods.com. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here. We always enjoy each other's company, or so I'd like to believe.
Oh, it's true. It's true. I thought this was the podcast where we break things. That's not. I totally. Okay. Anyway,
there's enough broken in Hollywood right now. It's okay.
I'm gonna need different.
Let's put things back together. I think.
Okay, if you say so. Jeez. Oh, never.
So
prepared.
I wanted to get the best minds I know, and by that I mean the two of you. I wanted to get us all together here because this is, I launched this Substack some months ago to really kind of get to the root, not to do reviews, which is something that we've all done for a long time, but we've also all made movies. Mark has worked extensively in television. Mark is a very successful television producer. For those who don't know, you were once an ACE nominee. What happened?
I was an Emmy nominee. Wait a second. ACE.
There you go. All right.
He goes all the way back to like 1993 to remind people.
The Cable Ace Awards are venerable, my friend. Venerable.
For the Howard Stern interview. I was nominated for the Howard Stern interview. But since then, I've been nominated for one Emmy, lost, probably never be nominated again. But you know what? It was a great party. It was okay. There
you go. So I wanted to get the best minds in the room because we always come up with interesting stuff whenever we put our minds together. And this is a really interesting year. We have not had a normal decade for the movies. Hollywood has it's started this decade with the pandemic, came in right at the beginning of 2020. We had a bunch of lost years, and then we had an amazing year last year, kind of a comeback year. Barbie and Oppenheimer sort of drove this amazing summer. You had a lot of films flopped during the summer, but then you had stuff that kind of came out of the blue, like Sound of Freedom and Taylor Swift concert film that were not studio films. And then we had Godzilla -1, that like blew up the box office for, foreign language films at the end of the year. But we had the strikes. The strikes kind of shut everything down. And we've had a lot of labor unrest and weirdness this year already. We're still not back to normal. So I kind of want to see where we are at the moment and talk to the two of you and see if we can kind of get to the root of all of this. So first off, let's just talk about Joker. And Joker is the Joker sequel specifically, which just kind of bombed. And I'm going to pull that up here.
Opened well, and then ate it.
But see, now let's talk about that because here, and I assume you're seeing the page that I just pulled up from the Hollywood Reporter. Joker box office shocker. Folie à Deux bombs with $40 million opener after receiving D cinema score. And, it's a musical for those who don't know. Now, there's something really interesting here. It says down here, even on Saturday, most rival studios showed it opening to at least 45 million to 47 million. And weeks ago, Warner Brothers first came on tracking. Warner Brothers movie first came on tracking 3 weeks ago, is pacing to earn 70 million. And the main argument here is that it's got here. It opened to 81 million overseas for a global debut of 121 million, and it cost 190 million to make. So therefore, it's going to bomb because Joker, its predecessor, opened to 96 million and got a B+ cinema score. So they're comparing it to the predecessor. So that in mind, let's talk about what all this means. Does this constitute a bomb?
Ultimately, yes, but the bomb comes with that D cinema score, not with those dollars. That movie's gonna make its money back.
Exactly. That's the point I wanted to get to.
Plain and simple. And frankly, that 120 whatever it is worldwide, even that 40 domestic, not horrible. Whatever those projections, screw those projections. I don't give a damn about those projections. What makes those people right? They're called projections for a reason. So that's crap. And frankly, I think that beginning probably with Kevin Costner's film, this season, and then there have been a few other ones.
Horizon.
Horizon. The projections have been the problem. I reject the notion of the projections. I reject the projections at all. If you go out into theaters and you make $40 million, particularly against a $190 million budget domestic, and you make half of your budget, nearly half of your budget back, that's not a flop. That's not a flop. Now, that cinema score, the measure of whether or not people like the movie, that makes it a flop. Not the money, the fact that nobody likes it.
Because at this point, I would imagine its only chance is if people want to see how horrible this movie could possibly be, because word of mouth is obviously going to be poison. Director Todd Phillips there's no fan service here. He did whatever he wanted to do. The audience was not on board. They expected more Joker shenanigans. They didn't get it. They got something totally different, and people didn't understand it, and they didn't like it. So the only way it's going to have any legs is if people want to see what this disaster is all about. And is that really going to happen? Probably not. It'll take its usual 70% dive in the second weekend, even though there's not a lot going on right now. Now it's becoming award season, so you get smaller films, which the average moviegoer is less interested in watching. So unless it becomes the mommy dearest of superhero films, and people just want to see how horrible it could possibly be, it's about as DOA as a superhero movie can be.
And it is being pointed out that no superhero movie has ever gotten a D score before. Even Madam Web didn't tank that hard, I don't think. So yeah, I agree. Is it a failure with audiences? But what bothers me, and Tim raised the point, is they're saying, oh, it's a bomb, it's not going to make its money back. And unfortunately, I'd love to believe otherwise, but the people at the trades really don't know how to calculate movie profitability. They don't, and most people don't, frankly. Even people who work in the business really don't know how this works. They just kind of take the studio's word for it. And so they start with, like Tim said, projections. Oh, but it was supposed to make. Forget about it. The people who try to tell you what a movie is supposed to make have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what they're talking about. Inside Out 2, doubled its projections. These people are just they're shooting in the dark.
And then we call those people geniuses, even though they were just as wrong. They were just wrong in the other direction. You're still wrong. You're always wrong. And I find that frustrating and undermining to filmmaking and filmmakers, which is what Kevin Costner was talking about.
Absolutely.
If they hadn't jammed those projections up his ass, he wasn't making any projections. He just made a movie. Yeah. And so anyway.
And what they're doing is they're also judging it. Look, if a movie that was made for, let's say, if a Blumhouse movie made for $2 million opened with 40 million, would we call that a bomb? No. So they're changing the standards based on what the thing costs and saying, well, in a $190 million movie must have cost over $100 million to market because the studio said so. Don't take what the studio says. What you need to look at is how much money is this thing going to make globally? If you open with 121 million in your first 3 days across the entire globe, you're going to be fine.
Yes.
You're going to be fine.
Everybody's getting paid. Nobody's mad at Todd Phillips, and he will ride again. This is what's also interesting. I do want to say this. It is distinctly possible, perhaps not with me, or actually we haven't talked about what we feel about the actual film yet. I have issues with the film, but I don't hate the film. I didn't like that first film at all. I just didn't like it at all. This film, I just, generally speaking, I have issues. I can promise you, in 25 years, this film will be thought of as some sort of work of genius, misunderstood genius. I can promise you. Because it's just the nature of things. You know what I mean? I've seen this happen at least twice now in my 63 years, from when I was 15 years old. Some moronic film that by the time I was 35, genius. It's genius. And then when I was 35, some moronic film. And by the time I'm 55, genius. It's genius. People didn't get it. Some 12-year-old film critic will be writing about how we were morons and didn't get it. And so, that's what's going to actually happen. But in terms of just money, the bean counters are all just fine. They're all just fine.
Well, I think, but the two issues is that Joker's going to have is, one, Blu-ray and 4K sales are basically kind of dead. That doesn't make up for box office losses like it used to, right? So you can't really depend on that to make up for much of the shortfall. The other thing is that because Joker's a Warner Brothers film. It's going to go right to Max. So it's not even like they're going to be making all sorts of money selling this thing to Netflix and cable stations and whatever. It's all vertically integrated. So they're not going to have Blu-ray and 4K sales, really. I mean, they'll have some, but they're not going to be able to sell this thing because it's just going to go right to Max. They're just going to pay themselves.
But they're going to get some sales overseas. They're going to get some VOD. They're going to sell to airlines. It's going to be, it's what Tim is saying is really meaningful in this sense that when a movie flops, very often when it flops badly, like a movie has to flop really badly, there is an economic benefit to that. There's not an artistic benefit, but there's an economic benefit because then everyone wants to see. Well, I got to see it. I got to see the train wreck. Like, why is this considered so bad? At least I'm going to watch 10 minutes of it just to see how bad can it be. Which Cats made some money off of that. I mean, Cats was so bad it actually got a boost in sales because people were like, I got to at least rent this thing. I got to like pay, sure, I'll pay $5, VOD just to see how bad can it be. Showgirls, Mark, Showgirls
We were there.
Showgirls was recently on the Criterion channel. Okay, for 2 months they had Showgirls as part of a curated group. I don't even remember what the series was, but it was on the Criterion channel. Now this is a movie where my memory is of sitting there in the National Theater in Westwood with 1,100 people laughing hysterically at this train wreck, and you sitting next to me curled. This was the cast and crew. That's right. Too. And you were curled into a fetal position next to me, moaning, and it was and I think it was Elvis Mitchell who leaned over to Andy Klein and said, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my entire life. I think that was Andy's recollection to me. So this is
now
that was so bad.
In certain ways, it's on the Criterion channel you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And in certain ways, what's that, 25 years ago, 30 years ago? In certain ways, venerated in certain ways. It's still this terrible movie, but this is what it is now. It's an ode to the sort of feminist. That movie took a hit, but who really took a hit was that actress, Elizabeth Berkley. Is it
Elizabeth Berkley? That's right.
Berkley.
Yeah,
she took a hit. That kid, she had been on that sitcom. And they took the entire weight of this film. She might have been 20 at the time, 21, something like that, by the time she got to the movie. And they put the entire weight of the flop of that film on that girl's shoulders, as if Paul Verhoeven and Joe Esterhaas and every other man down up the line of integration didn't have something to do with that film. And Elizabeth, this young actress, said, "Hey, you know what, guys? You're the filmmakers here. You guys, I'm going to give myself to you. I'm going to give myself to you." And she did it. She pulled the ripcord, baby. She went for it. She was not the problem of that film, which she in her career took the hit. And to the extent that film is talked about today, I think that's one of the reasons that the wrong person took the hit.
But also, and you're right, but also the thing about Joker is that Warner Brothers, because we're in a different, studio controlled, IP controlled world now, and Warner Brothers doesn't want to wait 25 years to see their film become a classic. They want the return now. Okay. And they're not going to get it.
That's Warner Brothers. That gets into the projections game again, right? We're playing on somebody else's turf. We're using all of the assumptions and the metrics that they are asking us to use, and we shouldn't.
But then Warner Brothers is not going to take a chance. Warner Brothers is not going to take a chance on the next guy who says, "I want to do a whatever with Superman."
Well,
they're go, you know what? The Joker didn't work. I'm not going to take a chance on you either. There is some downstream effect to that.
Downstream effects are 100% real, and they get bigger the smaller you are downstream. I mean, the big guys will do what the big guys are going to do. Todd's going to be fine. Joaquin's going to be fine. Lady Gaga's going to be fine. But it's really everybody else downstream. Everybody who had a film hovering around Warner Brothers that they had their fingers crossed for. Something interesting, something daring. Everybody like that in that Warner Brothers circle, that's who's going to get kicked in the nuts by this, Mark. So you're 100% right in that way. It's awful. It's just awful. But when the bean counters run things.
But here's the thing is that, because we alluded to this earlier, is that you have Horizon, Megalopolis, and Joker, 3 films, 2 of them, the directors put in hundreds of millions of dollars of their own money right, to achieve something they've been dreaming of for decades. And the other one, Todd Phillips, says, I made your studio $1 billion. I'm going to make whatever the damn hell I want. So you've got 3 films from very risky, daring, say what you will, iconoclastic directors who rolled the dice, and all of them crapped out, at least from a box office standpoint. And the problem is that box office, as much as we rail against projections and whatnot, it does tell the story of the movie and how it was received. Oh, Megalopolis is a bomb. Oh, Horizon, and people hated it. Oh, Joker, D cinema score. That's going to be the top line of that movie forever, right? And the fact is that we have 3 directors who took serious financial and creative risks to make their dream projects, and all of them crapped out. It doesn't really bode well for the studios, and they're all studio films, kind of. They don't really want to. They're not going to want to take a chance on that again.
Studio level,
sure.
Yeah, scale. The scale.
Well, let's segue from that to the summer lineup. So here we have the domestic box office for summer 2024, and this was the biggest August since before the pandemic. We have not seen an August like this in a very long time, and that is significantly because of Deadpool and Wolverine significantly driving it. But this was a very interesting. The summer months from Memorial Day to Labor Day kind of delivered numbers that I don't think a lot of people foresaw for this summer. So let's look at these. I mean, we've got Inside Out Inside Out 2 at the top slot, Deadpool and Wolverine in the second. Both have made over $600 million globally. Despicable Me 4, those movies just keep minting like crazy, $355 million. Twisters, did anybody see that coming in with $260 million? Bad Boys Ride or Die. Tim, you called it. We forget that the first year of the pandemic in 2020, the last Bad Boys was the #1 film that year. When theaters were closed, people still went out to see the last Bad Boys. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, that's another franchise. Quiet Place Day 1, another franchise. It Ends with Us, $135 million. I don't think anybody saw that coming in. If was kind of considered a bomb, and that still made $111 million. And even The Fall Guy, $92 million.
This is all domestic you're doing, right? This is all domestic.
No, this is global.
This is global. Okay.
This is global, which is it's all money against the bottom line. So looking here, I mean, to my mind, I don't see any of these movies as a failure. Even The Fall Guy, Garfield movie, $91 million, totally unexpected. Alien Romulus, 91. To my mind, these are all good numbers that over time, are going to translate into profitability for every single one of these movies. I don't even Furiosa, I think, is going to break even down the line at $67 million. Certainly disappointing considering what the previous film did. But to my mind, I don't see a lot of money losers in here until you get way down there to like Fly Me to the Moon. Yeah, that's disappointing. 20 million. That's not gonna.
Well, and it all has to be bumped up against the budget, right? Depending on what the budget was, I mean, I don't know what the budget of Madam Web was. Madam Web made 43 million domestic. I don't bumped up against the budget. So I'm sure we can find it here real quick, but let's just say the budget was double that, 100 million that they spent on Madam Web. I promise you, worldwide, everything over the course, it's going to make its money back. So in terms of actually lost money, none of these movies, depending on what their budgets are, lost money for real. Somebody's going to be out of some money. The total amount of money spent to put this movie in the world will not equal the total amount of money that this movie earns in the world, because that's all it really is, no matter what you're talking about. In the movie business, we act like it's something else. It's no different than a pair of socks. It cost me 2 cents to make these socks. I sold these socks for 4 cents. It's just no different. And when we look at this stuff up here, that's what we have to calculate. These are all big money. This is all big money, no matter how you cut it.
And don't forget too is that there's also other effects where parents will sign up for Disney Plus just because their kids are screaming to go see Inside Out 2 again. So now you're going to start getting parents who are signing up for Disney Plus month after month after month after month, even Deadpool and Wolverine. So it's not just necessarily the box office, and that's what the studios look at, especially now that most of the studios own streamers. That's what they look at when they greenlight these films. Also, is how's it going to play? Will that affect us down the line when this thing comes to our streaming service? And with Inside Out 2, I think it'll drive a lot of subscriptions, I think.
It's interesting. That's a good point. So do we think the summer was not a bust? This was an overperforming summer?
It was a backdoor success. I like
that. I like that. Now, again, when we're talking about money, and I know we're talking about money, most of these movies sucked. Of this long list of movies that we have here. So in terms of success, were there a whole lot of real good movies to go see this summer? Hell no. To me, most of the there were just not a lot of these movies that so no. But box office flop summer, no. The movie business is fine. The movie business is just fine.
All right, I agree, and I think next year is going to be something of a comeback year. But I don't see, now that all the labor negotiations are starting to sort of finish up, I think next year movies get back on track. 2026 is going to be a great year. It's going to be a big year, and everybody's going to wonder why were we so panicked. So let's get into the DirecTV and Dish merger. This is interesting. DirecTV agrees to buy Dish for $1, and we go back. They tried this about 20 years ago, the first time, and these companies are finally merging now because satellite is not such a big deal. I mean, it says here, private equity firm TPG will acquire AT&T's remaining 70% stake in DirecTV. Comes 9 years after AT&T purchased the company in 2015, only to sell a 30% stake in 2021. The question is, does this make a difference now? Because this was once a big deal. This got shot down by the government when it was supposed to be a monopoly. They said, we can't let you do that. And now everything is on streaming. Nobody cares about satellite anymore. Everybody's cutting the cord. Everything is wideband. If people don't even watch linear television as much anymore, everything is completely changed. So now we're shrugging at this merger. Is this meaningful, or is this?
Here's the thing: this merger, it's meaningless. And I'll tell you something. In my opinion, this whole thing is all about servicing debt, right? Dish has like $2 billion worth of debt coming due, like in November or something like that, right? And DirecTV is not doing much better. So I think that all these guys, they're trying to rearrange the deck chairs on their own individual Titanics so that when the end finally comes, at least they're not holding the bag for millions of dollars worth of unserviced debt. It seems like that's kind of the end game. At least that's how I see it.
Well, still going to require regulatory approval. Still requires regulatory approval. So if this happens, it's not going to happen until sometime deep in 2025. And I got to tell you, 2 weeks in this business can collapse a company. So, will this happen at all? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe both of these companies might be out of business by the fourth quarter of 2025. So sometimes it's about pushing up the stock value this morning. Sometimes these things, it's about this morning's stock value. And I go and look to see who declared stock sales. And so what corporate leads, because you have to declare those, you're going to buy or sell a whole lot of the stock in your own company. I go look and see who did that. And then I know what the hell is going on.
But the government might have said no to that because there are no others. If this merger is approved, there's no other satellite services. Well, the thing is that they're no longer competing against other satellite services. They're competing against streaming and all the other things that are going on. So given that, it is possible that the government's just going to let it go, which is fine because in 5 years, these companies will not exist anyway. But I think that now that the landscape has changed so much and that this merger, it's not going to stifle competition, even though they'll be the only satellite service really remaining because the competition has now become something else. And I think it'll be okay. So I think the government's going to let it go. And then in the end, in 5 years, there won't be these companies at all anyway.
Did either one I'd never had either one of those dishes on top of my anything ever.
I don't want that eyesore of a dish on my roof.
I had both, and I will tell you, DirecTV Dish was the better service in terms of the software and the interface and the customer service. DirecTV was just better in terms of the quality and fewer headaches technically. So, but honestly, don't have it anymore. That's the point, right? I mean, we experimented with DirecTV, then we experimented with Dish, then we got rid of the whole deal. Didn't need it anymore because broadband came. FiOS replaced it. It was cheaper. It was less of a hassle. There wasn't this delay every time you change channels, right? So yeah, I think everything came back down terrestrially, which is interesting to me because we thought, oh, everything's migrating to satellite. That's the future. And it turns out it actually came back down to earth again, literally and figuratively. So, a lot of people spent a lot of money launching satellites, which are now just big old paperweights orbiting the earth.
Well, that's the problem is that Dish and Direct, they have nowhere to go. Like if you're Disney, if you're Disney, you can say, hey, let's start a streaming service. We have the money, we can do that. But Dish and Direct, what are they going to do? Start a streaming service? No one's going to buy that. They're going to have no content. No one's going to care. So they have nowhere to go. So it's kind of over.
Even Roku is making their own original content, right? Isn't that weird?
Pretty good too.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Was that Weird Al Yankovic thing? That was good.
So let's move to another interesting topic here as we kind of try to assess the landscape that's going on. Major movie theater chains unveiled $2.2 billion plan to improve the cinematic experience. This was covered about a week ago, and it sort of I think it came out of the blue. 8 companies reported to the Theater Owners Association: AMC, Regal Cinemas, Cinemark, Cineplex, Marcus Theaters in the Midwest, B&B Theaters, Harkins Theaters, and Santikos Entertainment. They are all between them investing $2.2 billion. Now, Regal had announced just recently they were investing $250 million in upgrades, which seemed to be sort of out of sorts because everybody knows AMC has had some struggles recently. They've had to refinance and do a lot of other things to stay out of bankruptcy, and the pandemic obviously didn't help. So this is coming out of the blue with everybody saying, oh yeah, the audience has moved on, the LA Times was saying not long ago, but they're going to be upgrading air conditioning, lighting, signage, carpeting. It's like they're starting all over again. And $2.2 billion is an awful lot. And so the question I have is, clearly these companies are seeing the same thing up ahead, and they're not delusional. So with everybody else, Wall Street and whatnot, saying, oh yeah, streaming is taking over, the theaters are dead, the pandemic has killed them off. I don't know. It looks like the theaters are anticipating a great big move back to theaters.
Yeah, but it's worrisome because what's the content going to be? A Superman sequel? Like, 'cause here's the thing. Back in the day, and Wade and Tim and I are all old enough to remember this day, we would go to a multiplex and then decide what movie we were going to see. We just wanted to spend the afternoon at the movies. Now people decide what movie they're going to see. They're going to go see Inside Out 2, go see that, and then go home. So that's now the calculation with everybody. That's just how the culture is. We no longer go to the multiplex on a Saturday afternoon and pick a movie when we're there. So they're going to spend $2 billion on what, state-of-the-art air conditioning and immersive sound systems for what, to charge $20 to see a Nora? I just think that's going to be a fool's errand. But again, it's what movies will be playing that fans are going to want to go see. Because in the end, I don't know that the theater experience is really the issue to moviegoers. I think the issue is that they feel as if there's nothing for them to see. So I don't know whether they're going to want to spend this money for laser projection technology just to see, Amelia Perez. So I'm a little wary whether this is going to have much effect in the long run.
Tim,
well, this has happened before in the industry. Certainly, I can remember 20, 25, 30 years ago when all of the theaters, all the chain theaters, pretty much all of the theaters decided to get fancy. They put in those reclining chairs and all that stuff. And now at that moment, they were doing that because the notion was there's going to be a whole lot of great movies to come see. We had all those Marvel movies on the horizon back then, 20, 25 years ago, and so on and so forth. So it's, as Mark says, what's the content going to be? Now, there is content. Barbenheimer, and we can name all the movies that made. It's what we talked about in the first segment. All those movies made a crap load of money from people buying tickets to go to the movie theater. The other night, I'm over at the Grove here in Los Angeles, fancy theater complex, and they've got that little bar downstairs and everything over there. And I hang out and I go see this movie, and I'm looking over at that bar. And I got to tell you, nobody's in the bar. And then I look around the room, and the reason why there's nobody in the bar is because there's nobody old enough in this room to be in that bar. It's everybody in the room is here to see these more or less children's movies, very, very young people's movies. So there was a disconnect there. I thought that was cool. Go over there, grabbing a slider and a martini. But I'm like the oldest person in the room, and that bar was empty. So I don't know that what content that is going to exist is the content that those audiences will care about that bar or care about having their food brought to them at the table. All that. What's that chain out of Texas?
The iPick.
Yeah.
iPick or
iPick or Alamo Drafthouse.
Alamo Drafthouse.
Yeah, which is now owned by Sony.
Oh,
and see, that's another subplot, because Sony just bought Alamo Drafthouse and paid a pretty penny for it. So if it was a dead end for the theatrical business, Sony wouldn't have made that investment. And I've got a friend who used to be a finance VP at a couple of different studios, and he always says theatrical is the essential heartbeat of the business because it's where you index the value. Netflix doesn't know what any of its movies are really worth. It doesn't have a market price tag that it can put on them. If you release a movie into theaters, the theaters will index the value of your movie for every other ancillary. And you need theaters to do that for you. So it's sort of an essential part of the business. Eventually, the studios are going to probably have to own all the theaters again. And I think that's probably a good thing. I don't think, the consent decree really doesn't mean the same thing today that it did in 1946 or whenever it went into effect. So,
well, it would be a terrible thing for independent filmmakers. Independent filmmakers would never get any of their films to a theater if big studios.
But they've got streaming. They've got streaming now too.
And then they would have this other outlet, just like they had VHS or straight to video or straight to DVD. But back in the day, I suppose.
But streaming, it just goes into the ether of whatever. It just goes into ether of an algorithm, as you say. It's the theatrical experience that sets the value for a film. And I like the fact that Sony bought Alamo Drafthouse because it puts less onus on Alamo Drafthouse to be super successful every moment of the day, because it's just going to be another cog in their vertically integrated, whatever the hell machine, right? That they might let they might let. If there's a shortfall there, they may let other parts of the business make up for it and keep Alamo Drafthouse going. Whereas if Alamo Drafthouse was still owned by Alamo Drafthouse, it would have to constantly make money with nothing else to back it up in case of a shortfall. So actually, I kind of like the fact that Sony bought it. It's good around town. It's a nice thing to do just for the reputation of the company, for Sony. But I think also it'll mean that Alamo Drafthouse doesn't have to hit a home run every single time because it's owned by a gigantic corporation who won't necessarily care as much, and they'll have other avenues to make up for any shortfalls in Alamo Drafthouse.
So I'm going to put a couple of graphs up here, courtesy of our friends at The Numbers. That is the-numbers.com. This is a graph of annual ticket sales and tickets sold versus box office. If you look back here in 95, tickets sold were, on a graph higher than box office, and everything kind of flips right around here in 2004 and goes sky high up to 2018. And then, we get the pandemic, we drop into this valley here, 2020, where nothing was going. And then we're spiking right back up here in 2023 to roughly where we were in about 2004. But what's interesting is how much higher the box office curve is over tickets sold. So ticket prices are really outstripping ticket sales to get us back to that profit level. But what I find super interesting, we have this little dip here in this year because obviously, we have the strikes. You come down to this other graph. This is the one I find interesting. The number of movies released every year by major studios versus other studios. You go all the way back to 1995, more or less right up to 2019. There are more movies being released every year by major studios than there are by other studios, which is independents. In 2022, that flips, and this red curve of other studios has been just skyrocketing, 105 films versus 65 from major studios. This has never happened before, where most of the movies in theaters are non-studio pictures. It's flipped. just in the past 2 years, and nobody's really paying attention to this. So let's talk about that. I mean, is this just a post-pandemic, post-strike anomaly, or are we entering a place where independent distributors are now going to dominate the theatrical marketplace, and studios are retreating and just going to kind of live with streaming and ancillaries and not try to be the 800-pound gorilla? I mean, what is this a long-term thing?
I have a notion that for major studios, certainly they are only interested in releasing films that they think are going to be extremely significant box office generators, box office hits. So that pushes that number way down to begin with, because we're not going to just, make and put out a whole bunch of films, elite films, not worrying a whole lot about prestige films, a little bit of all of it, but mostly for major studios, it's about making a movie for 100 million that's going to make 300 million. That's going to push that number down no matter what. For the independents, look, if somebody's got to release these movies, and if they think that they can find a pathway to profitability, which again has to do with how much this movie costs, how much we have to buy this movie for, and what it's going to cost to get it into theaters, I can see why. What it does tell me is there's a crap load of money in the independent studio business. It tells me that there's money. The studios don't have all the money, so there's a lot of money around. One of the movies that you and I are going to be talking about on the radio show when we're on this week, Wade, is The Apprentice.
Yeah.
And I don't want to talk about the movie, but I think it's Briarwood, whatever the entertainment that's releasing that film. And I'm looking at that film, Sebastian Stan, big movie star, and all this kind of stuff. Why is this film not being released by a studio, a big studio? And I went to the screening the other night, and the director producer talked about a little bit of it had to do with the studios not wanting to deal with the quote unquote, this is the producer talking, the headache of releasing that film. And I think that some of it has to do with that. Studios just getting clear of anything that they think might remotely be bothersome or controversial. So when you add all of this up together, you got a much lower number of studio films. I mean, it's not going to make a whole lot of money. It's going to cause me a headache. It's going to kill all that off the schedule. And I think that's where you get that inversion.
I think that's a great point. Mark, any thoughts? Oh, I think Mark is not getting audio. No audio? Hold on.
I can hear you. Say something, Mark. I want to see if we're hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Definitely can hear you.
So if I can't hear you, it's probably on my side.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask Mark to log out and log in.
We did
again.
so well until I fucked it up.
It's okay.
I'm trying to find. I see the little log out and log in again. Fuck you. Okay.
Or just refresh. Or refresh.
Or refresh.
So, yeah. We'll take care of it. Hey, this is when we're doing these shows. That's how this goes. So Tim, while Mark is gone, I want to start the next conversation, and Mark will bring him right into this. But it's I'm going to bring up the page here, which is the to my mind one of the big deals, which is. And Mark, are you back?
Yes, I am. I can hear you, and you can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect. See, there we go. The magic of the internet. So, Mark, you were talking. You can see the screen right now, right? Tech tycoon Larry Ellison will control Paramount Global after Skydance deal closes. So, the Paramount drama has been going on for months and months and months, right? Ever since they started the conversation between Shari Redstone and David Ellison and Skydance, which was kind of under the radar of all the drama that was happening at Disney, right? Everyone was paying attention to Nelson Peltz is trying to get a board seat at Disney, and nobody was really kind of analyzing the Paramount deal. And now that it's closed, and we've had a few little, sidebar dramas since then, others coming in with the kind of last minute offers, none of them serious, but this really finally closed, as I always suspected it would. And it turns out that Larry Ellison, David Ellison's dad, and Megan Ellison's dad, is going to be the 9,000-pound gorilla here, because he's the one that put a relatively small fraction of his overall fortune toward controlling the company. And he did the same thing with Annapurna, right? When he came in to kind of save his daughter's company. So yes, his kids are running these companies, but and much as I do respect David Ellison, I mean, I give him a lot of props. Skydance has been a very successful company, and Annapurna as well, despite a few problems over the last few years. Came out guns blazing, got a lot of Oscar nominations, made some great movies for some great filmmakers that nobody else would make. But Larry Ellison seems to be the new old school mogul in town. It's his money. He owns it. He has the final word, likely at Annapurna as well as Skydance. We haven't had somebody with this kind of weight and gravitas in the business for a very, very long time. You'd have to go back to Marvin Davis, I think, probably in 20th Century Fox to find somebody who was able to throw their weight around one studio with that kind of final word. Murdoch never really did it with 20th after he took over, and it's been a while. So what does this mean? What is Paramount going to be in the business? What's it going to do? Are other studios going to follow suit? What are we looking at? Anybody want to look into a crystal ball here for me?
I would hope that obviously Larry didn't do this without David's, obviously he knew, and hopefully David supported, and hopefully Larry said, David, I'm going to let you run the movie studio the way you want. And I agree with Wade. I trust David Ellison to run that studio, at least give that thing a heartbeat. I trust him to do that, actually. I'm glad he's there. What will Larry do? Hopefully nothing. I mean, I at least on the movie side, which is all that I care about. So the hope is that he's in it. He's in it to make sure that as sort of a guy who's there as an overlord to make sure that nobody makes too stupid of a decision, and make sure it stays in the family. I don't know whether of Megan and David. I don't know which one is James Murdoch and which one is Lachlan Murdoch. I haven't figured it out yet. But hopefully he's there just to make sure that no one does anything stupid. Let David run the studio, and Larry can keep floating on his yacht for the rest of his life.
These families.
Succession again.
It's not the same as it was back in the day. Back in the day, even when it was family, it wasn't always family. The Warner Brothers and all. They making movies is what they did. Tech billionaire. That's what you are. You're a tech billionaire. You don't have anything to do. Jeff Bezos over there. With Amazon. But he doesn't mess with it. It's just this place where he makes the money. So I don't know. Look, this is what I suppose I feel about it. It means that exquisite, more than 100-year-old, I guess now, Paramount lot will not become condos, because I was really worried about that lot becoming condos, and I'm not even joking. We have a housing shortage in this town, and if they had not sorted this the hell out, that's a lot of space over there, and I promise you. Particularly given the fact that everything's made on LED screens now anyway, that would have become condos. Now it's not going to become condos for another 5 or 15 or 25 years.
I think
eventually that's going to be condos, baby. That's going to be condos.
See, I still live with the fantasy that Los Angeles will just become a whole bunch of ranches and movie studios again. We'll go back to 1925. Which would be, everyone's going to move out. Everyone's going to get sick of this place. And then it'll be ranches again. San Fernando Valley used to be
people are doing that now. There is so much, and this is another conversation, but there's so much TV production going to Atlanta, going to London, right? Going to Texas. In a way, the business is already moving away from Los Angeles.
And it's going to move back, because California will not stand around and allow one of its key industries to. I mean, Southern California's last remaining major industry. It's not gonna. It's gonna migrate back. It's fairly easy to do. But let's jump in. And any other final thoughts on Paramount? Just anything, any other. Where we're going to go with all of this? What are the studios going to look like?
I'm sorry, Mark. I mean, content, baby, because Mark said it before when we were talking about the other thing. Content. What's over at Paramount? You got all the Star Trek business,
Mission Impossible.
You got the Mission Impossible business, both of which are, I think we talked about this before. These are spent franchises in terms of feature films. think you might be able to squeeze another. I mean that about the Mission Impossible franchise too. I know it did all right and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sorry. I think that those two biggies are spent in terms of feature films. What are we doing? We're doing reality TV. What is the thing that they're going to make over there for the studio, the movie side, and then that streaming service, Paramount Plus or whatever the hell they call it? So what's the content, baby? That's what I want to know.
I'll tell you, I think what they could do is what the studios used to do. And I've been saying this for a while. I think we are going to get to a place where we migrate back to the old studio system, which is that if your franchises aren't your brand anymore, then the people have to be your brand. And that means you're going to be like Warner Brothers in the 1930s. What was their brand in the 1930s? Well, it was gangster movies and, a few other things. But for the most part, their brand was Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney, Betty Davis. That was your brand. Your brand was the
MGM
people,
had
the
musicals,
stars.
sure.
MGM had musicals. MGM had, Judy Garland. MGM had, right. Exactly. So eventually you're going to get to a place where your brand has to be either the genre or the people. And I think the easiest way in this current environment is to go after the people and say, Paramount, we are the studio who has signed this movie star, that movie star. We have a deal with this director, with that writer. That's where they are going to be able to sort of shore up their branding. And they're going to look at the people who have great track records on television and streaming and movies, and they're going to want to bring those people in-house. And then if you have really, really strong creative executives and good leadership, you're not just going to give these people a blank check. You're not going to just say to, whatever showrunner or whatever director, hey, here, go make something. No, you're going to have really strong creative execs who sort of say, okay, give me your 10 best ideas. We're going to pick 2 and we're going to give you some money to develop them. We're really going to bring out the best in you. But you've got to work with us and we will work with you. If you get back to that old school Hollywood studio structure where they really, really focus on the content. They focus on the movies, on the stories, working with talent, get those relationships built out. Sky's the limit. And I think Paramount could be the place that pioneers a return to that mode of business.
Well, the challenge there is that we're sort of in like a post-movie star world. I guess you could say, Michael B. Jordan or whatever, but there's very few movie stars left to make a splash. It's funny, we're almost seeing what you're saying in showrunners, where Netflix signs Shonda Rhimes or Ryan Murphy or whatever to a bunch of shows, and that makes a bigger splash than anything that a movie star is doing. It's a weird time. So that'll be the challenge: is are there enough named people out there that when you said Humphrey Bogart is signed with X Studio, that meant something back then. But if you say
it really meant that he was with X Studio for real,
sure.
I'm not sure movie stars want to hand themselves over like that. Look, maybe at that other end, what Mark was just talking about. So like back in the early 90s, Simpson Bruckheimer coming out of Paramount, so all that Simpson Bruckheimer came out of Paramount. Now that came with movie stars, came with Tom Cruise, as a matter of fact, and a few other, but it was a Simpson Bruckheimer film, and so on and so. I remember that mattering to me, man. I remember making very specific distinctions between Hollywood Pictures films and Disney films and Touchstone. It's all, but when it was a Hollywood Pictures film, and then who was in it and all that kind of stuff. But, I don't know, man, if we can get back there to that exact spot, because I don't know, if I was a big ass movie star, unless you gave me carte blanche, I do not know why I would tie myself to any one thing. And I think Mark's right. There's only one movie star anyway, and his name's Tom Cruise, and he's already at Paramount. So
now,
I don't know.
On that point, I want to gauge some reaction. So I'm assuming that both of you got your first Netflix box for award season. Did you get that?
Yeah.
No, I didn't get that. When does that come?
You didn't get that? Oh, okay.
Sir, you're missing the screenplay for Hitman is what you're missing.
Wait, when did you get it?
Speaking of yesterday.
3 days ago, 4 days ago. I got about
3
days
days
ago.
Well, that's a conversation we'll have offline as to why am I not that.
Okay, so I'm just saying, Tim, I'm going to share my screen now. Are you going to wear this?
I already gave that to my goddaughter, who, by the way, is not going to wear that.
Okay.
Already
Mark, would you wear this?
I'd wash my car with it.
You'd wear it
So-
washing your car, or you
No, I
would
use it to
your
wash my car.
Okay,
I
that's
dip it in a
want to be
bucket of
clear.
water, soapy water, and wash my car.
I just want to be clear.
Which, by the way, is the same way a lot of women would like to see Glenn Powell, dumped in a bucket of soapy water.
Glenn Powell is not a movie star. He's not.
No.
He is not a movie star, and no matter how many, they can literally tie him to Tom Cruise with a piece of string, and he still wouldn't be a movie star. I'm sorry, Glenn, I ain't mad at you or nothing. It's just that you're not a movie star, and it's not even your fault. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything. You're a handsome, fabulous guy. You can act a little bit, and all that kind of stuff, but you're not a movie star, baby, and you never will.
So here's what I take from that, though. And I made fun of it when it first arrived, pulled it out of the box, and I looked at it, and I laughed. And I thought, do they want me to laugh? Like, is this a joke? Are they trying to sort of, loosen us up a little bit to get some love for Hitman? It's hard to know. But I will say this. What it says is that Netflix and the studios and all these people, I think they are really willing to invest in building movie stars again. Because remember, that was something that the studios used to do. Movie stars didn't just happen. They allocated resources to take an actor, to take an actress, to get them coverage, to get them press, to teach them how to speak, to build them into something larger than life. And if the studios invest in that again, it will happen again. And I think it's a different celebrity culture now, when people can become stars on social media, when you can become an influencer, you can sort of build your own stardom. Well, I think those tools are available to everyone now. But if you have resources to allocate, I think it is more likely that the studios will prevail in building those stars and building those influencers and cultivating that. So I don't know. Last thoughts on that before we kind of dovetail into award season, which we've already kind of started off onto.
Well, YouTube absolutely does not build movie stars. I joke. I say there are no more movie stars. And I'm talking about a very specific thing from a very particular history, and which actually changed over the course of time. Golden era, all the way up to the present, probably through the early 2000s. Movie stars were very specific things, and you're 100% right, Wade. They were crafted very often. Sometimes some movie star would drop out of the sky. But 9 times out of 10, it was a crafting, a mechanism that went into play to make somebody a movie star, and that mechanism is still there in certain ways. It's more specific now. It might not be a studio doing it, but you might you get a publicist, and you get these managers, and you get these agents, and then they go about the business of turning their guy, their girl into a movie star. So you do your best you can, and we can see a few of them over the Anna Taylor-Joy. Her people, you make a movie star out of that girl. And I can go through a few of them. Sydney Sweeney. Glenn Powell is, in fact, one of them.
Yeah.
But can you do it today the way you used to do it back in the day? I don't know. For one thing, the content itself still matters, man. The real reason why Glenn Powell is not going to be a movie star is because the only movie he's been in that would even come close to making him a movie star was Top Gun, and there was already a star in that movie. So, and every other movie he's done, these are just these stupid movies. What do I care about these stupid movies at all? So that means that you're not a movie star. You're not a movie star because you didn't make me care about these stupid movies. Tom Cruise made me care about even Cocktail. It's got to be one of the dumbest movies I've ever seen in my life. But you put Tom behind that bar flipping those shakers, baby, and he, and I'm like, dude, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. So I'm sorry, that's where I'm coming from on it.
I
think Michael B. Jordan may have that potential. Michael B. Jordan, he may be a guy who can open a movie.
Michael B. Jordan is getting there, and this is the other thing too is choices, right? Stars have to. This was a thing early on too. James Cagney had to pressure Warner Brothers to let him dance and sing in movies because otherwise he would have been a gangster for the rest of his life. He would have been George Raft. And sometimes you have to push for those choices. Michael B. Jordan is one of those, and Brad Pitt before him was another one of those that said, "I'm more than a hunk. I'm more than a body." And if I have to put myself out online and do this myself. I'm going to make sure that I get to do something different, that I show people I can stretch, and I'm going to help build my career. So sometimes you have to do that. Bette Davis did the same thing. So you do have to tip your hat to those actors who know their value, who know their range, know their worth. And right in recording industry, we've had this too. Alanis Morissette, right? They tried to turn her into some kind of a teeny bopper, and she said, "No, I'm more than that." And she had to sort of help force them to move in her direction as opposed to the other way around. So yeah, a lot of it rides on the actors too, knowing their value and their worth. So solid point. I want to move to the award season now, which
wait, how much we doing for the show? My God, how long is this thing going to be?
This is it, man. This is our last segment. So we've got a lot of awards movies in the mix. Let's talk about what you guys think is going to be big. Sean Baker's Honora won the Cannes Film Festival. We have Jacques Audiard's Emilia Perez, which also was a big deal at Cannes. A lot of people are talking about that as being an awards contender. A new Pedro Almodovar English language feature, The Room Next Door, which just won the Golden Lion at Venice with Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. I've already seen Lee with Kate Winslet as the legendary World War II photographer. So what's going to be? What are you guys looking for as the big deals during award season? It's kind of a soft year, but it's also a wide open year. So what are we looking at?
It's a totally wide open year. I'm looking. I think Blitz is going to be, if not the one to be. Here's the thing: Honora won the Palme d'Or. I don't think it's going to be necessarily a Best Picture contender. Maybe it'll be nominated. Conclave seems like it's getting a lot of attention. I'm thinking next week. Probably not. People talk about Dune 2. I don't see Dune 2 as being a Best Picture nominee. Now because there's 10 nominations, it could sneak in. If Gladiator 2, if that winds up not sucking and being a big hit, that could sneak in that sort of populist slot. But otherwise, there's stuff I haven't seen yet, like September 5 I haven't seen yet, and The Brutalist screened last week. I didn't get to see that. I'll see that later. But that's supposed to be brutal. But we'll see. It's definitely a wide open year right now.
So I agree 100%.
So let's talk just for a second, because The Brutalist is over 3 hours long, which I think, unless you're Lawrence of Arabia or Titanic or Schindler's List, I mean, if you're not on that level, 3 hours will hurt you. If you are on that level, 3 hours helps you. So, you're right. You have to justify the running time. And it has an intermission too. So, and it's period, it's a biopic. That's all those things that the Oscars love, but it's got to it has to be in the same league with Schindler and Lawrence, right? To elevate to that place. Conclave, we'll see. I mean, these are directors who have not been in the awards mix before. Edward Berger directed Conclave. Brady Corbett did The Brutalist. They've been independent darlings for a long time. The advantage for Dune 2 is everyone loves Denis Villeneuve, right? Everyone is glad he pulled this series off. Dune 1 didn't get a lot of love, so maybe the Lord of the Rings thing will happen here. I am really looking at Blitz.
But if the Lord of the Rings things happen, then they have to wait for the third one.
Exactly, and we know that's happening, but it's also based on a lesser book in the series. But let's talk about Blitz for a second. Steve McQueen directed 12 Years a Slave, which won Best Picture, but did not win Best Director. Okay, so you could have the Godfather thing. Remember, Godfather swept all the Oscars for 1972. It won Best Picture, did not win Best Director for Coppola. But 2 years later, Godfather 2 got Best Picture and Best Director. So it was like a little bit of a makeup there, right? Bob Fosse, of course, won Best Director in 1972 for Cabaret. So with Blitz, it feels to me like, okay, Steve McQueen probably deserves Best Director this time around. At a minimum, I think we haven't seen it yet, but I think it's really interesting. And we were talking before the show, kind of comparing Joker to Blitz, and Blitz sight unseen. But let's just kind of wrap the show up with this thought, because I think it's a really interesting one to bring back. Todd Phillips is somebody whose career I don't feel like he's ever going to surprise me. right? Sometimes it'll be up, sometimes it'll be down, but Todd Phillips does what Todd Phillips does, whether it's The Hangover, whether it's Joker, whether it's the Joker, fully hit and miss, hit and miss. Steve McQueen is a guy who, for those who don't know, started as a fine artist, then migrated into movies, as a lot of fine artists have. Peter Greenaway being another one. And those first two films, to me, felt like super pretentious, super arty. And then he kind of started to put it together. 12 Years a Slave. Tim had pointed out, you're constrained by the novel, by the book, the memoir, and has matured as a filmmaker ever since. Has begun to prioritize the storytelling more than just the visual aspect of it. And so every single one of Steve McQueen's successive films, to my mind, has been an evolution, has been building on the previous. And for that reason, I think that's why the buzz on Blitz is so strong. The story looks so strong. The cast is amazing. Saoirse Ronan keeps making great movies. We talk about actors picking good material. She's another one. So does it feel like maybe Blitz is the movie that just on all of those check boxes is going to come right down the middle and maybe be our best picture and finally give Steve McQueen that best director that he's never had?
It's definitely out there. Although it's funny because when you were talking about fine artists and how McQueen is slowly advancing and getting better and better. He started good. I liked Hunger more than you did, but now he's great. I think of Julian Schnabel. Like, I love Julian Schnabel's movies. I do. I have to admit I do. But he's never really, he's never really gone the next level in terms of box office success and popularity. I wish he would, but now he's probably in his late 60s at this point. But it's because people are so excited by Blitz. I know some people who've seen it and they say it's great, but most people have not seen it yet. It seems like sight unseen, that's the one that people are most excited about. So, if the movie works, but if the movie works, it's World War II. But if the movie works, I think he'll get, rightly so, all the credit for it. Right? It's a Steve McQueen film. He nailed it. Let's give it to him.
And I just want to say that, the only reason you're keen on Julian Schnabel is because you really enjoyed the food that we had at the Schnabel event at the Saucer House with Benedict Taschen that one year. And don't deny it. I know it was true because you just love being in the room with Michael Mann and Al Pacino and saying, I'm in the room with Michael Mann and Al Pacino at the Saucer House and Benedict Taschen is right next to me and I'm eating great food and Wade is right next to me. You love that moment in time. And there was Julian Schnabel wearing like Bermuda shorts and Guillermo del Toro was there taking up like half the room, literally half the building was his massive weight. It was an amazing day.
No, it was an amazing day. And as much as I love staring at Al Pacino, which I tried to do with like the most subtle side eye I could, for me, for some reason, the weirdest moment was outside the home, looking in through the kitchen window, Peter Fonda stuck his head through the kitchen window to say hi to Al Pacino. And I thought that was just the oddest moment.
Yeah.
Probably.
What is Peter Fonda even doing there? And why is Peter Fonda not coming into the house? Why is he sticking his head into the kitchen window from out of the house?
And my memory of that day was, why am I taking a funicular to this house? And then I get there and I bump up against Willem Dafoe and have a cute little moment where he kind of like smiles at me. And he's like, oh, hey. And I thought, my goodness, you're short. I didn't realize how short he is.
My funicular moment, ladies and gentlemen, is when I got there, I wound up, because you have to go up some steps to get to where you enter the funicular. And at the bottom, before we went up the steps, I saw Bonnie Hunt. And I was going to go up and say, we're walking to get her to go up the steps. But I just didn't have the guts because it was laying there for me to make her laugh. And I didn't do it.
We've dropped so many names now that this is officially the most pretentious Hollywood heretic that there will ever be. Tim, Steve McQueen, is he going to pull it home?
Wonderful. You haven't seen it. Let me just say this: Pedro Almodovar, first English language film. Pedro is a genius. Now, Steve McQueen and Julian Schnabel are these sort of serious fine artists turned directors, and Steve is a historian, so he makes these sort of historical films. And far and away, Todd Phillips he makes movies for children. And no matter how old, he's still making movies for children, old school and War Dogs and Road Trip and all that crap. And you can take that Joker and wrap him in all that with Lady Gaga and Joaquin singing. It's movies for children. So all pointless. You got no use for any of that. Almodovar and Steve McQueen. Interesting. We shall see.
All right. Any other movies that now that we're starting to get screeners? And for those who don't know, if you belong to any guild, if you belong to any organization like the Academy, if you belong to any Hollywood union or to a critics organization, your mailbox starts filling up with screenplays and DVDs and Blu-rays, and you're starting to get emails with links, and it just becomes unbelievably oppressive pretty much between October 1st and like December 15th. And if you're an Academy member, it just keeps on going for the next 2 months. So it's an onslaught. Is there anything else that we're missing this wide open award season that we might want to keep our eyes on?
The Piano Lesson, Emilia Perez. The Substance, if for some reason that movie is amazing and then Demi Moore becomes like this, she winds up rising like a phoenix and the Academy suddenly cares about her. Maybe
yes, the movie, no. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because we're talking about movie, and then there are these performances. There are these performances. Demi and Margaret Qualley in The Substance. The Academy's not going to get that. Not going to nominate that movie though. The Apprentice, which Wade and I are going to be talking about. There's Sebastian Stan, really good, playing Donald in that movie, kind of. The movie, no. So there's that thing that goes on where I see a whole bunch of really, really good work being done by writers and actors, and even some good work being done by directors. But the whole thing, no. I'm having a really hard time now. Gladiator, we haven't seen yet. In my bones, I'm looking at Ridley's track record here for nigh on a decade. Big ass movies stanking up the place.
Yeah.
Napoleon, that Gucci movie, and so on and so forth. And I look at that trailer for Gladiator, and I see all of that CGI, which would have really impressed me 25 years ago, whenever that first Gladiator came out. But I see a mistake. When I look at the trailer for Gladiator 2, I see a trailer where all of that stuff is what I'm supposed to be looking at. All of that stuff is supposed to be impressing me. None of that impresses me. And save Denzel Washington. I'm sorry, there aren't any actors in that film. There's no Russell Crowe in that film. Russell Crowe, dude, Russell Crowe in Gladiator. If you can't duplicate that, then why are we making this movie? So, that's how I feel about Gladiator. Too.
And we should point out that we are likely to get Russell Crowe in a movie this award season. I believe it is still expected to be released in Nuremberg, where Russell Crowe plays Hermann Goering. And that sounds, it's kind of amazing. Wow, you go from Gladiator to Goering. How much weight did you have to gain? I think the question is, how much weight did Russ have to lose if you saw him recently? Because he kind of ballooned to an enormous degree. But anyway, he
didn't quite go Marlon Brando. He didn't go Brando. He didn't do that.
That is true.
He could still get around, and Goering was a big guy. Was a big guy too. What's interesting to me are all of the films, frankly, that I know that the producers of, the makers of, fully expected to. So Coppola's film Megalopolis, no. Costner's film Horizon, no. We've talked about these, no. And so there are a whole bunch of movies that the filmmakers, at a minimum, expected to be hanging around a whole lot of red carpets this season. And they will not be. On the other hand, Giancarlo Esposito, for instance, he's really good in Megalopolis.
He's very good.
Adam Driver is not, but Giancarlo is. So will we respect Giancarlo's performance even if we don't love that movie?
I think he is certainly not even. I think he's better than a dark horse to get a nomination. I think if anybody gets a nomination for that, it's going to be for the art direction and Giancarlo. I think those are the two that people are looking at. But I also think, we're talking about best supporting actor. I'm sorry, at this point, I know it's premature, but I feel like Jeremy Strong has a lock on it. Jeremy Strong is just going to run with The Apprentice all the way to the end. think
plays Roy Cohen in that. And
plays Roy Cohen.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's locked on.
He's astonishing. He's astonishing. I mean, and he's astonishing because he invests Roy Cohen with more complexity than I think, with enough complexity to do justice to the man, but with more complexity than you normally get out of a performance. It stretches. It puts him in a different tier. So,
Especially a performance like that. Yes. Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say,
please wait.
Go ahead.
Go
ahead.
Finally, end this way.
I was going to say, as we wrap out, it's fair to say that it's still a wide open race, and there could be some dark horses that come through, and the eventual Best Picture is a film that could totally surprise us, something we don't even see coming. Fair to say?
Terrifier 3.
All right. So, gentlemen, thank you for being here. I'd like to thank both of my dear friends and guests, Tim Cogshell and Mark Keizer, for joining me. Go to cinegods.com, listen to us at digigods.com. And
this is about
Tim
when
and
he
I
puts
will
in the music cue, so we'll look cool doing that.
Yeah,
I never look cool doing that.
There's no music cue coming in here.
Oh,
but
crap.
in any case, yeah. You can listen to Tim and to me on Film Week, especially this week. We're going to be on together on Friday, live on Film Week. Follow it up on with the podcast over the weekend. That's at scpr.org or 89.3 FM in Los Angeles on Friday. It's 11 a.m., right? When it airs.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. You got to call it LAist. You know that, right?
LAist. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for doing this. We're going to do this again very, very soon. And anyone who is viewing this podcast who hasn't yet subscribed to The Hollywood Heretic, please do so by going to hold on, let me pull it up here. Coming back to you guys. And going to put the banner up. There we go. HollywoodHeretic.substack.com. You can subscribe there for more access to members-only content and podcast episodes. Please consider becoming a paid subscriber. And until the next time, please make movies matter.